Hello everyone, it's June, I was about to say May. It's June the 6th today, and I think it's about time that I start my June reading vlog because I have finished one book, which is a young adult fantasy book, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I was interested to read this just because of the hype, and I really liked it. This is a retelling of The Beauty and the Beast, which I love, and this was one of the better retellings I have read. So I was pleasantly surprised, and then I decided to continue right on with the second book, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. However, I'm currently reading this one and I have lost interest in this series. I don't know what it is. This book is so popular on BookTube right now, so I don't know if it's the hype that has gotten to me. Whenever the story turns into some kind of a mission, I completely lose interest, and I feel like that's what happened with this book. So for now I have decided to put it down and focus on some other novels. And by the way, I gave A Court of Thorns and Roses 4 out of 5 stars. So it is kind of surprising that I'm not really into the second book. I just finished my first book by Miss Ellie Smith. This is How to Be Both, and I was quite impressed. This is a very interesting author. This story is about two fates, two persons who live in different eras, and both stories are told. The first story is about George, who is a girl, and that one was easier to understand, at least when it comes to its writing style. And the second one is from an artist 400 years earlier, whose story was a bit more messy, but in a good way, because while it was messy, I still understood it and it still made sense. I saw the lines between the two fates and it was beautiful. So because of my small frustrations when it comes to the second story, I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I'm very much intrigued, and I do see why people seem to love Ellie Smith. I just have to show you this. It is such a beautiful day outside. Since I last spoke to you, I have finished The Summer Garden by Pauline Simons, the third and final book in the Bronze Horseman series, which you might know I loved, and I was... My cat is having a blast right now. Anyway, if you hear any sounds, it's my cat playing around. But I love this book. Simply, I loved it. I do see why a lot of people might have some problems with it. I really do. And I did have, not problems, but I did cringe my toes at places. But all in all, this book just makes sense. This story makes sense, and it is beautifully written. I can't tell you too much about the actual story because then I would be spoiling all of the series for you, but I think I have rated all books in this series 5 stars, and this book is no exception. I woke up early this morning. I'm still tired, sorry, but I woke up and I finished my next book, which is this one, a Danish book which was released in June here in Denmark, and it's called Ravnenes Hvisken, and it's by Malene Sølsten. In English, I guess you would call it The Whispers of the Ravens. I don't know. Anyway, I'm once again sorry if you don't live in Denmark. I'm not sure you can get your hands on this book, but if you do, I recommend that you do so, especially if you're into young/new adult fantasy. Okay, my brain is not working yet. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I like this book. The only thing I had a problem with while reading, because it is a quite long book and it contains a lot of characters, and each character has their own story. So the only thing that really bothered me was that it was very hard to keep track of everyone and all the creatures that are part of the story. But other than that, I really liked it and I gave it 3 stars. New day and new book. I have now finished The Robber Bride by Margaret Atwood. And this was on my summer to be read list because I wanted to read more by Margaret Atwood. I think she's a very interesting author, and this book was really interesting. Basically, it deals with this kind of person that is poisoning your life. I'm sure everyone has that kind of person in your lives. However, the person in this book is really poisoning 3 women's lives. And it turns out that she dies, which is a relief to everyone. But she comes back and she haunts these women. So basically this book is about how she has poisoned their lives and what is going to happen now. I really loved it. I think it's very relevant for everyone. And it may sound a bit humorous, but actually it's written in a very mysterious and sinister tone. So I liked it. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I have received a box full of books, which is always an amazing thing, so I thought I would share that with you. Before I do so, I did receive this earlier today and I started it immediately. It is The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenny Fagan, and it has the most gorgeous cover. So I've got that one waiting for me, and then I've got this amazing box. So let me just quickly share it with you. So this is, what is it? The Queen of the Night by Alexander Chi, which has the most stunning cover. I mean, come on. And then what else have we got? Very tiny book I can see. This is What Belongs to You by Garth Greenwell. I quite like this cover. It did come with another one, but this one was definitely my preference. So that's that one, the receipt. What is this? So this is The Words in My Hand by Genevieve Glassford. Another stunning cover. I do believe that all of these books are pretty recent releases. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to get all of them in hardback. I don't think they're out in paperback yet. And then the last book. Wow, the last book is called The Birches Hook by Janet Ellis. And yeah, I got these amazing books, which, wow, I'm looking very much happy to dive into them these days. Are you happy too? Are you excited too, Zeus? He does want to look at them, or maybe it's the box. Yes, obviously you would like to look at the box. No? Okay. So, since I last spoke to you, I have finished 2 more books, and the books are The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenny Fagan, as well as, if you want to get in my hands, Wildflower Hill by Kimberly Freeman. Now let me start with this one. This is one of those books that I don't really care talking about, just because it wasn't that impressionable. It was quite predictable and I was a little bit disappointed, but it deals with 2 women who seem to have nothing in common. They live in different eras and in different places, but as you can imagine, they do have something in common, and that's what we get to know about during the book. It wasn't that good. I mean, I was hooked at some points, and that's why I did give it 3 stars, but it just isn't a book I would like to talk too much about. However, the other book, this one, was absolutely amazing, which is quite surprising because this is a post-apocalyptic book, which I don't usually like to read. I do read it sometimes, but I don't really care for it just because it scares me, and I don't really enjoy reading those kinds of books. But this one was an enjoyment. It deals with some characters who manage to find each other even though the world is in the middle of an ice age. And everything is covered in snow, everything is frosty, you cannot live the way you used to, and people are dying every single day. But what I love about this book is the fact that these characters who didn't know each other before, they managed to find a glimpse of hope in each other, and that is what makes them go through the harsh times. I obviously cannot spoil what the ending is going to be like, but simply I just love this book. This is what I want to talk about. I would like to recommend it, and the cover, as you can see, is stunning as well. So this was a pleasant surprise, and I gave it 5 stars. So let me try and film from this angle, just because I would like to show you the book that I read next, and that is The Birches Hook by Janet Ellis. Now, first of all, gorgeous cover, and yeah. But when you open it, look what happens. This is amazing. I absolutely love it. So I couldn't explain this. I had to tell you. And then when you take off the cover, you have this beautiful spine. But basically, what are my thoughts on this book? I freaking loved it. This has got to be my favorite book of this month, so far at least. Just because it mixes everything I love in literature. It mixes the macabre with romance and beautiful prose. All of that mingled together is this novel. It deals with Anne, who is a 14-year-old girl who lives in London in the 1700s. So the story is told from her perspective, and it's very easy to read, it's very easy to follow. But then you quickly realize that Anne is not your typical 14-year-old. Actually, it turns into quite a horror story, and that's what I loved about it. I didn't see it coming, but I loved where it was going. So as you can probably guess, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really good surprise, and I strongly urge for you to read it. I have now finished my next book, which is this one, The Words in My Hand by Genevieve Glasford. So this book is set in the Netherlands. It is a historical novel, and it tells about René Descartes and his love affair with a woman named Helena. This love affair was a secret to everyone, so it's basically about the tension in their relationships, how it developed and all that. So basically I am left a little bit confused after having finished this book, just because the beginning was beautiful. I loved reading about their relationship and all the tension going on, all the secrecy. But having finished it now, I feel like a lot of things were missing. It wasn't a great story, and I do think that the author has decided to make some kind of a true depiction of what was happening, which is okay, I guess, but I was looking more for a great story. So I don't know, I mean, I loved part of this book, but I do feel like it lacked a lot of things. So in the end I gave it 3 stars. It was definitely interesting, but not as brilliant as I was hoping for. I see the mailman here, he just put something in my mailbox. It might be books. I'll have to go and see. I was right, I found this, and I think it's a book, but it's extremely small, so now I'm getting excited. I do think I know what it is, but I'm pretty surprised that it is this tiny. So I have my doubts that I can do this one-handed, but let's see what happens.
Yes, here we go. And my battery's flashing, so I better hurry. So, let's see. It is a book. But which book? Is it an Alice book? Yes, it is.
Wow, yes, definitely. I was looking for this one. I really want to read it, and now I can do so. Don't you just love it when your cat is lying like this? Sis, are you trying to be the girl from Titanic? Oh yeah, paint me like one of your French girls, isn't that the line? I'm about to go to a party, but before I do so, let me tell you about this book, which is What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours by Helen Oyeyemi. My first book by her. I'm sure you've heard of her because she is getting around on BookTube quite a lot, I think. But this is a short story collection, and I didn't know what I was going into. I had heard that she writes magical realism, which is true, and I quite like magical realism, so I thought, why not try out this author? Now that I have, I'm glad I did, but I will say she's not my favorite author, just because her stories, I was kind of skeptical when going into her book, just because I had a fear that her stories would be a bit too confusing and open-ended, and I love open endings, it's not that, but I don't love these kinds of stories where you don't get any kind of resolution and it all seems so confusing that I'm just reading it for the sake of reading it. I'm not necessarily enjoying everything I read, so I was okay with this book, but it wasn't overly amazing. I gave it 3 stars. I do know of a few people who would love this kind of story, so if you have any interest in it, please don't take my word for it. Just look it up and see if it's something for you. I have now finished what is going to be the last book of the month, and that is this one, a Margaret Atwood book, and this one is called The Edible Woman. Now, I have already read another book this month by Margaret Atwood, which I really liked, and I wanted to read more by her. This one was really good, but not just as good as the other book I was reading. This one was interesting and very relevant because it deals with feminism. However, it was written way before feminism became a social issue. I don't know if you could say issue, but before it was discussed. So Margaret Atwood was definitely ahead of her time. I found this book funny at parts, and also I really liked the main character, but I did find that she was a bit too whiny at places. Basically what this book deals with is the fact that the main character Marianne is going to marry a man, but she's struggling with whether she wants to marry him or not, because inside she doesn't really want to, but that's what everyone does at that time. Everyone marries and everyone gets a family and become happy that way. So basically I like this book. It was very relevant and interesting, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So that concludes my reading vlog for June. I hope you enjoyed it, and as per usual I will be back again next month with a similar video, so stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for watching. Happy reading!